Hello everyone and welcome back. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so. Thank you so much. Let's move to today's class. Today's class, it will be on the urethra, but more specifically on the female urethra. Now, the urethra is the vessel that is responsible for transporting urine from the bladder to an external opening, the perineum. Let's talk about some key facts that you need to note about the female urethra. The first one is that its length is about 4 centimeters. The length is about 4 centimeters, and that it extends from the internal urethra orifice at the bladder neck to the external urethra. And the third one is that it lies anterior to the vagina. Having discussed this, let's talk about the anatomical relations. I'll be using this diagram as a reference point. So anteriorly, you can see the pubic symphysis. So that means the pubic symphysis is somewhat around here, right? Pubic symphysis. Then posteriorly is by the vagina. So the anterior relation of the urethra, the female urethra to be specific now, is the pubic symphysis, posteriorly by the vagina, and superiorly by the urinary bladder. Now, it is also worthy of note that the epithelium of the female urethra changes along its length. So the proximal part is lined by urothelium, which is transition epithelium. Then the middle part is by the pseudostratified or stratified columnar epithelium, while the distal end is by the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. So this is the female urethra, right? This part is female urethra. So the proximal part is lined by transitional epithelium. The middle part is by pseudostratified or stratified columnar epithelium, and the distal part is by the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. So having discussed that, let's go to the arterial supply of the female urethra. Now, the blood supply to this urethra is by the internal pudendal arteries, one. Then the second one is by the vaginal arteries. And the third one is by the inferior vesical branch of the vaginal arteries. So once again, it's supplied by the internal pudendal artery, vaginal arteries, and inferior vesical branch of the vaginal artery. Let's talk about the lymphatic drainage of the female urethra. Now, the lymphatic drainage of the female urethra of the proximal part, we said we have the proximal part, right? The proximal part that is lined by urothelium. We said we have the middle part that is lined by pseudostratified and stratified columnar epithelium. And so we have the distal part that is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. So the lymphatic drainage of the proximal urethra is to the internal iliac node, this part. Then the distal urethra is to the superficial inguinal lymph node. So just like any other structural anatomy, we'll be discussing the clinical relevance of the female urethra. Why is it very important to know the anatomy? Now, due to the short length, we said it's about 4 centimeters, right? Extending from the internal urethral orifice of the bladder neck to the external urethra, right? And due to this length, women are more susceptible to infections of the urinary tract. So once again, if you are to subscribe to this channel, please do so. And if you have any questions, do well to drop them in the comment section and I'll attend to that. Thank you so much and see you in our next class.